Okay. So I'll be admitting people as they log in. And Alana is going to be our presenter today, our facilitator. So I'd like very much for this to be an interactive experience. So please, if you guys have questions, comments, go ahead and type them into the chat box and I'll keep note of everything. And then when Alana is at a stopping point, she can answer them. And then at the end of her presentation, we'll do a Q&A so you guys can ask any questions of her. You guys can ask any questions of me regarding NAMI Greater Houston. And then I'll talk to you guys also a little bit about what NAMI is doing right now to kind of help the community through this crisis. All right.
All right.
I will release the reins to you, Alana.
Well, I appreciate it. So I am Alana Higginbotham. I'm actually the mental strategist. And what I do is I help people put together a strategy and or a plan for their mental, depending on what it is they're trying to achieve. Sometimes I'm working with business owners, sometimes I'm working with parents, and sometimes I'm working with just regular people who are having a challenge one way or another. I am not a therapist, but I do provide a lot of great tools to help you in conjunction with a therapist. And so today we're going to be talking about the mental fortitude for daily success, particularly as it pertains to what's going on right now, because oftentimes it's easy to prepare or forecast for something that we know is coming up. And it's also easy to forecast for situations that maybe we don't know for sure they're coming, but they're types of things that we go through regularly in our society. But it's a whole different ballgame when it's something like this. No one expected that we'd be confined to our homes for an extended amount of time. No one expected that regular daily tasks that we've normally been doing would turn into something that could be hazardous to our health. And so we're going to be talking about mental fortitude as it relates to your daily success, but also in particular as it relates to navigating through something like a quarantine. So I am going to share my screen with you. And there we go. So when it comes to mental fortitude, I am the kind of person who has not only built a platform to help others, but I have gone through a lot of mental challenges and changes as well. When it comes to being overwhelmed, I've overcome depression, anxiety, and things like that. And I decided about a year ago to write, a little over a year ago actually, to write a book and outline the tools that I have used in order to help me navigate through my life, because I feel like a lot of people are similar to me. We're doing things, we don't really know which way to turn, and we don't really know exactly why we're having these challenges. And in a lot of cases, we feel like something is wrong with us. And one of the easiest ways to combat feeling like there's something wrong with you is putting yourself in a position where you're around other people who are going through what you're going through, identifying. And what I identified was that there's one thing that's missing from everything, and it's your mental strategy. You know, we strategize for a lot of things. We strategize on how to get a better job. We strategize on how to get a better boo, or how to lose weight, or maybe we want to write a book, but rarely do we ever take into consideration our mental as it relates to that. So for business owners, maybe they're trying to scale their business, and I might say something like, well, you're trying to do a big project in the month of February, and you mentioned to me that your father died in February. How is that month going to be for you mentally? Not saying that we need to switch the event from February to another time, but what I'm saying is, what are the tools that we're going to put in place that are going to be simple and sustainable to help our mental not only sustain putting on a big event, but also working through the anniversary of a tragic time or traumatic time in our lives. And that's really where your mental strategy comes in. A daily mental strategy is something that's even more simple. It is something where you are putting down roots, you're putting down mile markers, so to speak, for you to focus on at the very start of your day, and for you to be able to go back to throughout the day if things get tough. And that's no matter what tough looks like, because let's face it, sometimes the toughest thing you're going to do in a day is get out of the bed. Okay. So sometimes I have my longest conversations with myself or with anybody as I'm about to get out of the bed. Or I have allowed myself to quote unquote sleep in. And now I'm looking at the clock thinking, okay, sleeping in is fine, but how much longer are we going to be up in this bed? And then, I start to diagnose, why am I so tired? Is getting up going to be beneficial to me? Or am I ignoring signs that I've been doing so much that I now need to spend some time resting and in bed? And that's all part of your strategy. Now, your mental strategy is very interesting. It's something that is going to forecast and plan your thought process, your emotions, and your mental awareness. Okay. Putting together a mental strategy is not it's not a remedy that's going to kill any challenges that you're going to have, right? It's actually just a fortress, if you will. When years and years ago, thousands of years ago, when there were castles and they used to build a fortress and a moat surrounding the castle, they built those things to protect the castle, but also the family inside of the castle. And on top of that, they didn't build it thinking that it would deter anyone from ever trying to attack them. They built it with the end in mind that if something does come up, I'll be prepared. And that's really what your mental strategy is. It's your fortress. It's your moat around your personal castle that you're using to combat against anything that may come up. We're not sitting in a position where we're trying to pretend that life doesn't happen. We're not trying to pretend and put on these rose-colored glasses where people tell you, you just need to be positive. Well, it's very, very likely for positive people to have a negative experience. So what do? What do you do in the moment when everything around you is the opposite of positive? When you get the phone call that your 40-year-old cousin had a stroke, and you can't get to her because there's a pandemic and nobody's going to let you into the hospital. What do? Do you just be positive? No, you have a strategy. And your strategy is something that's very simple. And in order to put together a strategy that's going to be effective for you and one that's going to live and breathe, what do I mean by that? When I say a strategy that's going to live and breathe, I mean something that is going to change and grow with you and with your life's situations. So some of the things that tripped me up as a mom when my kids were smaller either are non-existent right now, or I've gotten so good at it that it doesn't trip me up, right? That doesn't mean that those things aren't going to happen. Also, what happens is time passes, and because we haven't experienced that situation in a while, we forget and it takes us by surprise. And often when a situation takes us by surprise, we start to feel defeated because we think to ourselves, I've already been through that. Why is that bothering me? Why is this situation with my sister-in-law have me so upset when I know how she is and I know how she operates? Well, it's likely because you haven't been around her in a while and you haven't had to deal with that in a while. So we're not going to beat ourselves up. We're just going to ask ourselves some questions. Now, when you're talking a long-term mental strategy, let's just say you're putting together your strategy for the year. Ask yourself, what times of the year am I most excited? What times of the year do I look forward to the most? Here's why that question is important. Because one, if there's something that you're planning or something that you want to do, you might want to either schedule it around the times of the year that you're most excited, or take whatever elements around that time of the year that you feel like make you so excited about that time of year and produce those in other times of the year where you're not as excited. For me, I love the sunshine. When the sun is not shining, it's a little tougher for me. So what I try to do is I try to, whenever the sun is shining, spend as much time in the sun as possible. And I don't mean like laying out with the sun shining on my face. I mean outside, breathing in the air, taking different elements. What do I love about this? Sometimes I'll even put a screensaver on my television that is of the sunshine. So on days like today, the sun's starting to shine now, but this morning, the sun was not shining. So you're taking these elements on times of the year where you're not as excited, and you're implementing some of the characteristics of other times of the year. You're also using these times of the year to plan out things or to postpone things, right? You want to be graceful to yourself and not say, Alana, you just need to get it together. Or Cecilia, you just need to get it together. Yes, your dad passed away, but it was 20 years ago. And every year this time, you still hide yourself under the covers. Well, let's look at that. Looking at times of the year is something that's very helpful to you. When am I most overwhelmed? Now, when it says when, we're not only talking about time, but we're talking about situations. What situations are you most overwhelmed about? Are you overwhelmed when the kids have things going on, your husband has things going on, and you have things going on, and you can't figure out how to spin all the plates at once? Sometimes people get overwhelmed when they don't have a lot of things to do on their calendar. There's diagnoses that we could go into, but we won't. Sometimes there's reasons behind from our childhood as to why it is certain times, certain situations overwhelm us. Being mindful of those situations, of those times of year, of those tasks can mean a world of good when it comes to putting together a mental strategy for yourself. Maybe cleaning your home is overwhelming. Maybe you might want to look at your budget and see what you can pull back, what area you can pull back in so that you can plug in a cleaning service. You'll be stimulating the economy by hiring a cleaning service, and you'll also be putting off things that you are overwhelmed by and allowing someone else to do that. When it comes to tasks, are there certain tasks that you absolutely dread doing? Going back to cleaning up your house. Okay, raise his hands. For me, that was what my life was made of. I feel like I live in a locker room because I have 3 men and I'm the only girl. And sometimes it feels like the whole house smells like a dirty sock. And sometimes it feels like nobody's going to the bathroom and getting it into the toilet. I'm just being transparent. And so you get to the place where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to hire a cleaning service. So I did. And in that moment of hiring a cleaning service and getting that off of my plate, it also pushed a little bit on my husband because that was an extra expense in the house. So that was motivating to him. Let's see what we can do to get this under control. And now we have a system, we have things we do daily, things we do weekly, and it actually is helpful teaching the boys. So when it comes to tasks that you dread, I would encourage you to not spend a ton of time in that place trying to figure out, why do I hate this so much? Sometimes spending so much time on why you hate something so much can only bring you down even more. And if it's a task that you dread, there's likely a reason, many times an underlying reason. And if it's helpful to your sanity to put that task off, that's what you should do. Trying to analyze yourself and beating yourself up because you don't like to clean or you don't like to do this or that, but other people do, is not being very kind to yourself. And that can have a negative effect on your mental. What time of day am I more productive? Some people do better at 2 o'clock in the morning. Let's just face it. And there is nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you something. I have gotten some of the most things done at 2 o'clock in the morning. Years ago, we lived in a different house that was configured differently. And so I could stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning organizing a cabinet or cleaning something out because the way the house was set up, no one else could hear me and I wasn't keeping anyone awake. And I was very productive at that time. In those years, I beat myself up a lot because the norm was no, you wake up early in the morning before your kids get up and you have your alone time. And, it's a pretty picture. It's something great to aspire to. But if you spent many years and you know that you do your best work after 12, you do your best work after 12 a.m., be kind to yourself. Maybe you can change that later on, but just schedule what you need to do during your actual productive hours, not the productive hours that the world tells you should have. Now, which task do I look forward to doing the most? Depending on who you are and how you think, a lot of times doing what you look forward to the most is what you should start your day with, depending on how you think. But sometimes you should take what you love to do and put it throughout the day, kind of almost as a reward. Like, okay, let me knock out these things that I really can't stand doing so that I have the opportunity to get to the task that I actually think is fun, that I actually enjoy. So for some people, doing the thing that you love in the beginning only means all the stuff that you hate is put off and procrastination sets in. Putting together a strategy and a plan and knowing all of these things is going to help you move forward throughout your day. Now, currently, a lot of us are working from home. So this might have to do with your home life. This might have to do with your personal life, you individually caring for yourself. Maybe what you need to do, one of the things that I look forward to in the morning is my cup of coffee. And I usually drink about 32 ounces of water first thing in the morning. If you ever want, this is 36 ounces or 32 ounces. If you ever want to get your day started and get your digestive system started, chug 32 ounces of water before your feet hit the floor. Trust me, your whole day will go smoothly, if you know what I mean. And so I get my water in first thing in the morning. And then the next thing I do is I have my little coffee ritual. And I love it. I figured out recently that I actually get it from my grandmother. My grandmother, who is about to be 95, still hangs out with her girlfriends, still drives. She makes an entire experience out of a cup of coffee. And it really is how the old folks do it. And so it's something that I look forward to first thing in the morning. So it's something that will keep me from hitting the snooze too many times, right? Now, when it comes to your day-to-day work schedule, maybe there is something that you look forward to doing and it'll force you to get your day started when it comes to your work, because that can be a challenge now with everybody being at home. We're getting really comfortable, right? Another question to ask yourself is, have you considered unforeseen circumstances? You probably didn't consider a pandemic or a quarantine. But once you spend enough time considering unforeseen circumstances in the manner in which I'm talking about, things like this won't completely derail you. It's going to be some bumps in the road, but I subscribe to a particular belief, as difficult as it is to remind myself of sometimes. I believe that everything that happens to me in my life happens for my greater good, the greater good. So maybe my immediate good is not so fun, right? Oh, it's a husband. There's a husband in the room. Hey, husband. They're creatures that really do exist. Mine's downstairs keeping the kids quiet.
He's a good one too.
So maybe you, because I believe that everything happens for my highest, greatest good, it puts me in a mindset that, okay, even though it's tough right now, back here in the background, I have like a torch that's burning, right? And that torch that's burning is the constant reminder that no matter what's going on here in the foreground, back here in the background, there is something that is steady, that is sure, and that is strong, that takes care of whatever's going on. Because when we pay too close attention to what's going on around us, we don't consider the bird's eye view that this situation is just a bleep on the screen of our entire life. Now, does that mean I'm being insensitive to the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of deaths going on in the world? Does that mean that I'm being insensitive for all of the people who are giving their very lives to care for what's going on with the pandemic? Does that mean I'm being insensitive to the people who are not making money at this time because of the pandemic? No, it just means that I understand that these things are true. And I understand that as long as I proceed and I process it going forward in a way that actually serves me, I will not only be able to survive what's going on, but I'll be able to take any lessons and any tools that come during this time and use them going forward, right? I try not to allow outside influences to come in and tell me, if you haven't started a new business and developed new relationships during this time of this pandemic, you've wasted your time. Well, maybe that's what it looks like for other people, but for me, it looks a little bit different, okay? So considering unforeseen circumstances does not mean you know exactly, okay, an unforeseen circumstance, Alana, is a tragic death. True. But maybe you're not prepared for something that's coming your way. You've never considered it. And so just being in the mindset of whatever comes, I know I'm prepared for it. And how do I know that, Alana? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. The reason that you know that you're prepared for whatever comes is because if you look behind you at the rest of your life, you survived all of that to get to this place, right? And so the idea in some people's heads is that life and its challenges are like a snowball effect. The further along you go, the bigger the challenges are. That's not necessarily true. Maybe the bigger the obstacles, but after you've survived, first of all, coming down the birth canal, that just in and of itself is a great reminder. I survived that. That was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of unknown. And now you're in a position where whatever comes, I know that just like I survived the last 43 years, I can survive whatever comes forward, right? These are questions that make all the difference when you ask them to yourselves, right? And many more, there's many more questions out there, but this gives you a really good idea of what I mean when I'm talking about putting together a mental strategy for yourself. You're asking yourself these questions and you're being honest because you're putting together the strategy. So you're being honest with yourself. You know what? I don't know if I want to go to that baby shower because the people that are going to be there aren't actually people that I really like being around. So maybe I'll send a gift or maybe I'll send my regrets. But whatever it is, I'm going to choose my mental first and proceed with that. Now, you want to get clear, okay? When it comes to clarity, clarity is something that can seem like it's fleeting. Like, what does that mean, Alana? What is clarity? Well, clarity is in focus. You're clear about what it is you want, okay? What you don't want, you also need to be clear about as well, because many of us through habit and when we're not intentional, we focus on what we actually don't want. And focusing on what you don't want will only get you more of what you don't want. So get clear about where you're going and what you want. Do I want a new boo? Do I want a new job? Do I want a new career or a new car? Well, then there's going to be some changes that you're going to have to make to get those things. If I want to buy a car, I want to buy a house, maybe there's some money that I'm spending that I need to pull back on, right? Get real clear about what it is you want. And what I mean by that is also, what does it take to get what I want? And be very clear about that. And then you're going to focus on that. Focus is just maximum clarity. Focus is clarity on steroids. Focus is you saying, okay, I just need to start with the bare minimum, and that's having a happy day. That's my goal, Alana. Getting out of bed and having a happy day. How am I going to do that? What you're going to do is you're going to lay out your thoughts the night before. Okay. And laying out your thoughts are similar to when you guys were in school and your mom made you lay your clothes out the night before. And the reason why she did that was because she wanted you to be able to get up and begin the routine and zip through the morning so that you guys could be on time for school, right? and you laid your clothes out so that when you got up in the morning, that task that oftentimes takes more time than it needs to is now checked off the list because those clothes are sitting there waiting for you. That's what you're going to do with whatever you're focusing on for the day. If what you're focusing on is happiness, then you need to lay out your thoughts by either taking a journal page and writing out what the first thing is you're going to be thinking about that day. Maybe you're going to take some screenshots on your phone and put in your notes app on your phone if you have an iPhone, or your notes app on your Samsung, and you're going to take some pictures that when you wake up first thing in the morning, you pick up your phone and you're looking at those photos. It could be a picture of an object. It could be a picture of sunshine. It could be a picture of a person who's graduating and they're walking across the stage, because maybe for a long time you haven't felt like you're adequate enough to go back to school. And when you're before your feet hit the floor, you watching a person who looks like you walking across the stage in a cap and gown, that's what you're focusing on for that day. Maybe it's an inside joke that you have with your siblings. Maybe it's a picture of a clip from a movie that always made you feel comfy and cozy. Whatever it is, you're giving yourself something to focus on. I've been told in the past that telling someone they need to focus more is kind of like a fleeting thought. It's like, okay, I get it, but what does that action actually look like? And focus is being presented many times in a way as like it's just this switch you turn off and on. And so you see your kid, they're not doing what they're supposed to, and you say, focus. Well, what it really means is what I just described, is you're finding something to put your sights, your view, your ears, and your mental to. This morning while I was getting ready, you guys may have seen on my stories or Nami's stories, I had on some 70s R&B music in the bathroom while I was getting ready for the call. And for me, that brings me a lot of joy because it takes me back to the 70s when I was a little girl and my dad had every piece of music known to man, okay? He had this big peach crate that had a bunch of, some of you may know what this is, some of you may not, but there were albums, okay? Think really big CDs. Some people don't even know what a CD is, but it just brought me back to a time when I was a little girl. I could picture my dad and I spending time together and listening to music, things like that we have to be intentional about because the day gets ahead of us before you even know it. All you need to happen is as you're picking your head off the pillow, you got to knock at the door and it's your 11-year-old saying, Mom, I just burned the last waffle. What am I going to eat for breakfast? The kid is not going to die. Tell him, give me a minute. True story, by the way. Give me a minute. I'll meet you in the kitchen in about 30 minutes. Spend this time trying to find yourself an alternative for breakfast. If you haven't found it by the time I'm out, I'll help you, but I need 30 minutes. And then go back to your phone, go back to your journal, and focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on for that day. Does that mean that things won't happen throughout the day to aggravate you? No. But you'll have that anchoring thought to be able to go back to and focus on. Now, it is also important to know that what we're working on is progress, not perfection. Regression, meaning going back and repeating old behavior, is part of the process, okay? You are building a muscle. And there's going to be times where that muscle is going to get sore and you're going to have to let that muscle rest. And sometimes you might let it rest too much, but it's progress. It's putting one step in front of the other. Also remember that as you're out in the world and you're absorbing information, maybe you're watching a documentary, you're reading a book, you're watching this e-course, keep in mind that these are suggestions that people are giving you based on their own personal experience. Even if it's someone who is reading something to you out of a psychology book where there are hard, fast rules to how you should practice psychology. Keep in mind, they're still sharing their own personal experiences. So it is up to you to be your own mental advocate and take from them what works for you. Maybe there are 2 or 3 things that you hear me say that you feel like that's what I'm going to do. Maybe there's one, or a half of a thing that you hear me say that you think that's what I'm going to do. Whatever it is, you implement these tools into your life the way you see fit. So I feel like this is probably a good place to pause and ask if anyone has any questions out there. I had to move the chat. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, going forward, progress, not perfection. I could spend a whole entire e-course on just this right here. I remember the day one of my girlfriends shared this with me, progress, not perfection. I can remember also being super frustrated when my oldest son peed in the bed when he was like 5. I was thinking, we are already past this. You've been potty trained since you were 18 months old. Why are you peeing in the bed? Is what I'm thinking to myself. But I remember that was the first time that bad taste in my mouth when it comes to regression really resonate or really came up. And I was just thinking, I checked that off the list already. And then I had a girlfriend of mine tell me, but Alana, sometimes that's part of the process. And I never thought about it that way. And I also didn't think about the fact that since I hated regression so much, that I was also limiting my own progress. I was putting myself in a headspace where I was only taking on changes and learnings that I knew I could do without regression. Or I would take on something, I would experience some regression, and then I would beat myself up about it. So what we're doing is we're taking steps forward. Part of taking steps forward means maybe you might have to take a few steps backwards, and that's okay. As long as you keep that torch burning back here in the background, that all things happen for my highest, greatest good, you'll stay on track. Because at the end of it all, what we're trying to do is make strides and create rhythm. And that's what you're doing. By being here on this e-course, on this workshop, you are making strides and creating a rhythm. And the cool thing about a rhythm is you can add on to it. You can tweak it. You can change the notes. As your taste changes, think about songs that have been remade. Think about beats to old songs that are now in new songs. They're making strides and they're creating a rhythm. That's going to look different for everybody. And so what you need to do at this point is trust yourself enough to make the proper decisions for yourself. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how am I going to do those things, Alana? What are the steps? This is what I consider to be the difference between the way that I teach and a lot of what is out there just in general, but particularly when it comes to mental strategy, mental health, mental wellness, is that we do a lot of clapping and a lot of pep rallying, and we say a lot of really cool things. But then when the meeting is over and people leave, there's nothing for them to be able to go back to. There's no tool, there's nothing that they were able to look at and say, okay, now that I am out in the world, when I get in my car, I can go to number 1 that Alana mentioned. And what I mean is I call them simple and sustainable tools. So when it comes to anything in my life that I conquer, the things that I have been the most successful at changing and doing and creating were things that I did by using simple and sustainable tools. Something simple, it means that it's not only easy to understand, but it's easy to implement. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about a simple, sustainable tool. Sustainable means it's something that I can do continuously, very simply, very easily. One thing you'll learn about me is I'm very candid, I'm very open, and I kind of really shoot straight from the hip. I try to filter it depending on who my audience is. But one of the things that really helped me was meditating while I was on the toilet. I know, you're thinking, Alana, deep breathing while you're on the toilet? That doesn't sound fun. But trust me, one day, overwhelmed and depressed me got up to do my morning bathroom routine. And in the short amount of time I was there in what they call the water closet, while I was there in the water closet, I took a deep breath and I held it. And then I breathed it out. And I did it again. And when I breathed in what I wanted for the day. One word. I just wanted to be productive. At the moment, that's all I could muster. I breathed in productivity and I held productivity for 3 seconds. And then I breathed out negative self-talk. So there was 2 things that I knew. When I put my head to pillow at the end of the day, I will have been productive. There was no measure of productivity, but I would have been productive. Oh, you were really productive. I really wasn't that productive. I was productive, and I put a little bit of a silencer to negative self-talk. And that started it all. But it's funny how you think you only have a little bit of time to do something, but the more you do it, the more you enjoy it, the more you push things aside to create more space for more time. And so I graduated all the way up to doing meditation twice a day. And it has been very helpful. I've gotten off of it, but I'm getting back on it. And it's just something that was very simple and sustainable. So even if I can only have time to sit at the side of my bed and breathe in and out for a couple of minutes, I do it. So here are the simple and sustainable tools that are going to help you. The first thing you are going to do is decide. You're going to make a decision. Nope, I've been hemming and hawing around with it. I have been considering going back to school. I've been considering taking time for myself throughout the day. I've been considering not hanging out with those people anymore. But today I'm making a decision and I'm doing it. And once you make a decision, the cool thing about making a decision is once you've made the decision, it doesn't feel as hard as it did before. And the other cool thing is once you've made a decision, it also checks off the list of a lot of tiny little decisions, right? So if I make the decision, maybe my decision is I am only going forward for the rest of this month, I'm only going to spend time around people that actually enjoy my company and I enjoy their company. Well, that decision also means you won't be going to the after party after work on Friday because a lot of the people at that party, you don't really care for their presence, right? Maybe you're not going to the baby shower of the daughter of your uncle's best friend who you never really cared for anyway. You know, it little decisions. No, I'm not sending a gift. I'm not. Okay, so you made a decision. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to determine the people, places, and things around you that are going to grow that decision. It's like being pregnant. Whether you have been pregnant before, you understand the process of being pregnant and you understand that there are a certain set of restrictions that become automatic for anyone who is in the process of having a baby. You understand that there are certain people that you probably won't be able to be around because let's say maybe you're having some challenges and you know that your blood pressure increases when you eat certain things or you do certain things or around certain people. Determine what is going to help facilitate that decision and help make that decision a steadfast cornerstone in your life, right? Because right now it's a decision, but later it's going to be like a piece of furniture, right? You walk past the sofa in the game room, you know, and you don't think to yourself, oh, look, it's the sofa in the game room. Wow, it's the sofa in the game room. No, you walk past it because it's been there for 10 years in the same spot. It's there. And that is the goal for setting up these mental strategies. Once you decide and then you determine, you're on your way. Now you need to distinguish. Okay, you've determined what's going to be good for you. Now you need to distinguish because sometimes the things that you have decided are good for you may be good for people like you, but the way that it is being processed or presented is not good for you. I'll give you an example. You're distinguishing between the things that you have now determined are good for you. So I want to grow my business. Let's say I'm a makeup artist. I want to grow my business and I have decided that I need to do something new in my business. I have a makeup artist friend of mine and she decides that she's going to start doing something called mascara and Moscato. And she's going to rent out the party room in a wine bar. She's going to have light bites and Moscato, and she's going to teach a makeup class, and she's going to video the whole thing, right? Well, she's a single woman, and she has no kids. I am a married woman with 2 children who I homeschool. So if I look at what she's doing, and this is actually a true story, I got overwhelmed thinking, God, when am I going to have time on the weekends to be able to do makeup classes at a wine bar? Well, I had to distinguish that although that was a good idea in advancing my makeup business, maybe that particular makeup advancement or business expansion wasn't necessarily for me. So when it comes to those types of things, maybe you are looking for your soulmate, and you have distinguished that you have a lot of friends that are single that are also looking for their soulmate, and they have a particular regimen of things that they're doing, right? But then you got to distinguish, they're still all single. So do I really want to do what they're doing? And they all seem pretty smart. And I see this a lot, guys. I see y'all laughing. I see this a lot. I see a lot of single people giving advice on dating. No, I'm sorry. A law student is not giving legal advice. So what you want to do is distinguish, okay, maybe if I really want to get myself a boo, maybe I find a couple who is married or a friend who is married and that they're in a successful relationship and I talk to them. Or maybe I need to distinguish, do I really want to be married? This is what you're doing. Now you're going to download all of that whole focus thing that I gave you earlier. You're going to download those things. Maybe you're downloading all of this by watching a webinar, getting an ebook, or getting a audio book. Maybe you are hanging out more. And these things, the downloading is regimented. You're like, okay, every morning I'm going to listen to a podcast that talks about, good relationships or building a business. Once a week, I'm going to call my friend Alana, who's been married for 20 years with her husband for 25, just to chat. Maybe you don't even know what you're going to ask her, but just chatting, right? You're downloading these things now. And then finally, what you want to do is do not deviate. Does do not deviate mean, Alana, it's hard, it's fast, it's a rule, if you get off of this schedule, then you're doomed to failure? No. Do not deviate means once you've set the basic bones for this process, always go back to what you've already created. Now, maybe you might do this in a new pair of pants or a cute pair of sunglasses, but it's basically the same process. You feel what I'm saying? You can change kind of what it looks like. Maybe you're downloading and you've decided all of your downloads are things that you do by yourself. And now you've decided, you know what? I think I'm going to go hang out at the park on Sunday because people with families usually hang out at the park on Sunday. So instead of all my downloads being reading a book, listening to something, or calling my friend on the phone, I'm going to get out of the house and go enjoy some time around people with families, because that's what I want in my life, right? So do not deviate does not mean perfection. Do not deviate just simply means you have made a decision. And in most cases, you have spent a lot of time thinking and processing through that before you made the decision. So trust yourself, make the decision, do the determining, be sure to distinguish, download what's necessary, and do not deviate. This is the part of the presentation where you guys get to ask me some questions, and I will answer them. So does anybody have any questions, either about exactly what we talked about, or maybe something that I didn't cover that has to do with your mental? Cecilia has a question.
Hello, Alana.
Hello, Miss Ottenwiller.
I really, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate everything that you've done here. This is a really neat presentation. I love what you put together.
Thank you.
It's very thoughtful and very useful. One thing I'm concerned about, though, and it's not really concerned, but I'm curious about how you bring this into the equation. How is it that community is part of your program? Is it all an internal job, or is it something that you're doing within community? How does that work?
Well, it's for me, I believe that everything starts with us, right? Because our society is really big on helping others and giving to this charity and donating your time to this. And I think that is very important. But I think the one thing that we're missing is, at least this was my experience, and still is today my experience. I think the one thing that we're missing is us, our individuals, saying, I need some help. I think that is the paradigm shift, that if we create a space, that I think that also deals with the whole no stigma campaign. If we can create a space where people feel comfortable, or it's just normal to say, you know what, I'm not okay today. And this pandemic is actually doing that. This pandemic is actually creating a space where in corporate America, they're on conference calls and the big boss, the boss's boss's boss, is asking people how they feel. What's your mental state right now? You know, it has changed the way we grieve this pandemic. I have a friend of mine who just grieved the death of her aunt, and her aunt was in the hospital and no one was able to be there in the hospital with her. No one found out that she had even coded until she died. So, and then when it was time for the mourning process, they had to drive to Louisiana with the understanding that when they came back, they would have to be in quarantine for 14 days. But only immediate family were able to go to the funeral home 7 at a time. So there's a lot of things that are going on in our society right now that I feel like are encouraging people to say, I'm not doing okay. I actually need help. And so for me, I feel like if we encourage people to do that, that is going to have a positive effect on our community, because people are going to feel less like they're going to be judged for asking for help, and more like it's my duty to my community to ask for help. Does that make sense, Cecilia?
No, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Oh, this water is so good. It's nice and cold. Does anybody else have a question?
I do.
Oh, look, it's Jessica. What would you like to ask, Jessica?
Well, my question is, would you, given this pandemic, given this very unique and unprecedented situation, would you make adjustments to your strategy for this, or what does that look like? How would you adjust your process to accommodate for this enormous trauma that we're all experiencing?
Excellent question, and excellent adjectives in describing what we're going through right now. It is, what really happens is you condense it and make it bigger. Does that make sense? Condense it and make it bigger. Because of what's going on right now, it's like you're taking all your tools. Let's say you were one of my clients and you and I talked at the beginning of the year, maybe November, December last year, we started talking about putting together your mental strategy for the year, right? And so we had this year-long thing and all these processes of how you were going to, let's say the particular plan I put together for you, where there was something that you did daily, weekly, and monthly, right? Well, now that the pandemic has happened, it's important that maybe some of your daily things, you might have to do a couple times a day. Maybe some of the things you were gonna do once a month, you might bring that in and do that once a week. But the cool thing is you have these tools there. You know, I am full of examples. So I like to cook. And I also like to organize, right? And I believe that tasks, because of the way I think, I can kind of be all over the place. Because of the way I think that if tools and tasks are organized, then I can reach for them when I need them and move, right? And so these tools are like that, right? Right now, we're reaching for things more than what we were before. And this is, you know, when it comes to your mental, but when it also comes to, you know, right now people are cooking more. So right now moms are using, I just got rid of all my old wooden spoons and ordered some really funky, cool looking new wooden spoons, right? And it wasn't until the pandemic where I was like, you know what? I've been having these things for a long time and they're raggedy. Let me get some new ones. And now I have experienced these really cool new wooden spoons from a family-owned business. And so I believe that that's basically what I'm saying. I believe that right now, putting together a mental strategy doesn't mean that it has to, quote unquote, change much, but it just means you might have to reach for your tools a little bit more and be okay with reaching for those. I know I had a little bit of a moment where I thought, well, wait a minute. I thought my mind was set on how I was going to handle this pandemic. why am I feeling so overwhelmed and anxious right now? What is going on? Well, what I didn't realize was it was just about that time, pandemic or not. Being a stay-at-home, work from home, homeschooling mom, who also shares an office with her work from home husband, gets overwhelming. And what I hadn't realized was, barring the pandemic, it was about that time for me to get away and have some time to myself. And so over analyzing sometimes can be my challenge. And so I hopped in the car and drove to Galveston, parked on the seawall, and ate boiled crawfish on the trunk of my car. And then came home sometime around 7:30, 8 o'clock. And it was better. I was able to take myself out of this environment, think about some things, decompress. And I think that that's really what it's about. I think that you're not changing your plan. You are just reaching for your plan a little bit more often. Did that make sense?
Thank you. Absolutely.
Because I get excited. And I start talking like this. Does anybody else have any questions? Before you leave me, I wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to stay connected with not only some of the tools that I introduced here to you today, but also if you wanted to get the book, you could always go to Amazon.com and either type my name in, Alana Higginbotham, or The Mental Breakdown. And that book is actually on Prime. So you should get it in a couple of days. Well, before the pandemic, you could have got it in a couple of days. I'm not sure how long it's taking now. And before I forget this part, you guys still have time to ask more questions, but before I forget this part, if you want to stay connected with me, these are all the ways to do that. You can screenshot this. My website is alanahigginbotham.com. Instagram is at Alana Higginbotham. I'm on Facebook as Alana Higginbotham. I figured with a name like Alana Higginbotham, you should probably just stick with that on all platforms. So the people aren't like, okay, Alana Higginbotham, now what is it? The mental breakdown. I mean, first of all, we having trouble remembering your name. So info@alanahigginbotham.com is my email address. And I am very interactive with my followers. So if you hit me up and send me a message on any of those things, I usually answer myself personally. And so if you have any questions going forward, you guys can definitely email me or hit me up on any of those social media sites that I mentioned. But I would love to answer. I guess we got about 5 minutes or so. Are we stopping at 1?
I'm just whenever everybody feels that they've had their questions.
I mean, it's not like nobody got nowhere to go.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for this session because it was very helpful. I really enjoyed everything that you had to give to us and how you broke it down and had examples because I'm a visualist. So when you said things, I could visualize what you were saying. And you also helped me to normalize those days where I do start cleaning my house at 2 a.m. It made me feel like it's okay for me to do that because sometimes
You're not a slacker, Denise. You're not a slacker.
Yes, because there are definitely days where I'm like, okay, I should definitely clean in the afternoon, and I lay around all afternoon. I'm like, you know what, 2 a.m., I'm going to put on my music, and I'm going to get to busting some suds. So you definitely made me feel like that's okay that I switched my schedule around, and especially during a time like this where I feel like in interacting with, my friends and family and just talking to everybody about what they're going through during this time, where everybody is kind of finding their rhythm in this new norm that we're in. So with me personally, I found that, well, I already know that I'm not a morning person at all. Like I don't like waking up early in the morning. That's not my most productive time. And so I started sleeping in a little bit later and pushing all of the tasks and things that I need to get done to the afternoon and the evening and early hours of the morning to get it done. So there at the beginning of this pandemic, when I was kind of switching my routine or my schedule around, I kind of was beating myself up like, what are you doing? You need to be like the early bird gets the worm, get up early in the morning. But this kind of did help me to realize like, no, as long as I'm getting my stuff done and I feel good about it, I'm happy about it, then it's working for me. So if it looks like something else to somebody else, that's okay for them too. So I just wanted to chime in and say that.
Absolutely. Thank you for thanking me. It's very true. It's very true, because at the end of the day, it's really a task list. It's a list of tasks that need to be completed. And when you complete them, it doesn't necessarily matter, unless one of your tasks is, let me get these chicken breasts in the freezer before they expire. Well, maybe you might want to do that. Now, but maybe you might do it at 2:00 in the morning the day before they expire.
Right.
It's totally up to you. And also be open to, maybe there will be a season where you will wake up early, right? And it doesn't mean, okay, now I got it together. It just means that's the season. That's where I am right now. I'm like you. I don't have a problem sleeping in. Okay. I don't have a problem staying up till 3:00 in the morning, or 5 or 6. But being open and giving yourself grace and realizing that there is nobody more equipped to make decisions for you than you. Yep. There are maybe a lot of people out there who have done things that you have not done, who can give you great advice, but the person who makes the decision is you. You are the most equipped to make that decision, because either one or two things is going to happen. You're either going to learn a lesson, there's either going to be a lesson that's going on, or a level up, whichever one. And the more lessons you learn, the more times you can level up. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you as well. I like the Galveston imagery, because that's been a plan to go to Galveston. I hadn't thought about the crawfish, so now, but yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And the crawfish place is right across from the seawall. So I just drove up, lady came out, I went across the street, I went to the gas station, got me some water, brought me some hand sanitizer and some wet towels. And look, I breathed in that good old salty seawater, and my family lived to see another day.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I too would like to thank you, Alana, for speaking to us today. Oh, and before you go, Cecilia and I need to know your coffee routine. That's important.
Thank you.
Oh, you like coffee? Oh, okay. So, and I even recently did a coffee meditation with Hope for Three. It's a group of autism advocates. And I did it for the parents, because right now there are parents of autistic children who they were able to get a little bit of relief by their kids going, to school or what have you. And now they're having a challenge. But my coffee routine is, first, I have a mug that I love. Now, this mug just got added to the collection. I got it from HEB. It's 19 ounces, so it can hold 2 cups of coffee and some cream. But I'm on keto right now, so I drink bulletproof coffee in the morning. And bulletproof coffee is just coffee with ghee and MCT oil. And ghee is like a purified grass-fed butter. And I put it in my coffee. I have a little frother that I use, and it whips it up. I do a sweetener. It's a monk fruit sweetener, so it tastes like sugar and not like fake sugar. And I use heavy whipping cream. And sometimes I will sit in the chair in my living room if it's quiet, or I'll go in my bedroom and sit on the edge of my bed, and I will just be with my cup of coffee. Sometimes I might want to get fancy, and I want to be like my grandmother and use a saucer. My grandmother's 95, and no one makes a better cup of coffee than her. She uses the drip pot, the aluminum one that you boil the water, you pour it into the pot, and you sit it there and you let it drip real slow. Best cup of coffee ever. She fixes it and she puts it in a coffee cup with the saucer. She puts a napkin on the saucer with the cup on top to catch any drips. And then she has this Tupperware container that is specifically made for sugar. It is the color of your sweater, Jessica, but a little bit more mustardy. Like, who remembers when kitchen appliances were that color, right? So it's that color, and I have been seeing it on her kitchen table for 43 years. And it's just a whole ritual. Like, your cup of coffee doesn't have to be rushed. And so I sit down and I marvel in the cup. I marvel in the smell. I feel the warmth of the mug. I take a sip and I make sure I taste the cream, the sugar. Sometimes I put a little bit of vanilla extract or a little bit of hazelnut extract, maybe even a little bit of peppermint extract. It's a ritual. It's an experience. It's not even about the caffeine. It's about the cup and the whole thing. Does that make sense to you, ladies?
Totally. You know, one of the things I hear about in everything that you're saying, Alana, that I think that underlying everything that you're doing with this is this real sense of gratitude, right? You know, and centering in what's really important as opposed to what's not.
Yeah.
And
paying attention. You're paying attention, because the stuff that needs to get done, it's always going to have your attention. Right. And as a society, we mess that up. We think we have to focus on all the things that we're bad at. We're always going to know what we're bad at. We need to spend a healthy amount of time working on what we're actually good at to change things. I actually have my grandmother's apron that she wore when my grandfather was alive. She actually wore it like regularly, right? And she let me have it. And I have it rolled up inside of a small vase in my cupboard. I was sharing with Jessica and Cecilia. And it is also an object that sometimes I'll take out of the cabinet and I will focus on and I'll think about and I'll remember, remember her wearing it and things like that. I feel like sometimes those things get away from us, and those things are what made us who we are. And they remind us why we actually liked ourselves at some point.
Yeah, it also reminds me, I've got a picture of my grandmother on my desk. And it's like that apron. It actually, I have a picture in front of me of somebody who loved me unconditionally.
Nothing like it.
Yeah.
Nothing like it. Nothing like it.
Thank you.
I have had a wonderful time with you ladies today.
Likewise.
And gentlemen, if there was any gentlemen on the call, I don't know.
There were a couple.
My husband's been lurking in the
for a little
kitchen.
while.
Okay, her husband's been absorbing all of this. Wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And please stay tuned to the emails and social media for the next one. We're actually going to have another one on Friday. One of our board members is a Grammy Award-winning songwriter, producer, and singer. And he's going to be talking to us about what our seat at the table looks like. How do you find it? How do you get to it?
What's his name?
Billy Dorsey.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Wonderful. Well, I honestly enjoyed my time with you ladies. This really fed my soul. I appreciate you all for getting on and listening to me. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful life.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.